So welcome to the Hop Nation podcast. Today, I'm real happy to have Nicole Jansen from Leaders of Transformation podcast, as well as a number of other things. So to make sure I get this right, I'm actually going to read the bio and then we'll get into the podcast here with Nicole. So over the past 30 years, Nicole's coached and trained thousands of leaders to transform their lives and achieve extraordinary results in business. Nicole's clients not only experience a substantial increase in sales, team performance, and profitability, they also experience greater confidence, clarity, and personal authenticity through discovering and playing to their strengths. She is a certified Human Behaviour Specialist, business breakthrough coach, strategic intervention coach, and the founder of the Discovery Edge and the Leaders of Transformation podcast and community, which I'm so happy to be part of. Met so many great people through there, and we'll hear more about that today on this show. Nicole will have a couple free giveaways and awesome offers that we'll put in the link at the end of this, and make sure to share and take advantage of these. You know, this is a huge opportunity, I think, for those of us listening to this Hop Nation podcast. So please take advantage of that. So welcome today, Nicole.
Thank you, Corey. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. I know I'm learning so much from you. You're kind of my podcast coach at this stage. You know, one of the few that I have as I, begin this journey. So I appreciate you helping me along this and being a guest on here. So,
well, I'm excited. I'm excited for your Hop Nation. Congratulations on launching a new podcast. I mean, this is the era of podcasting. So many people are doing it. Everybody's trying to figure out how to do it the right way, whatever the right way is. And, but just getting in the game. And that's how I started, right? It's just get in the game, try it out, you learn as you go. So good for you.
Absolutely. Well, and we were talking before we went live here, how I'm sure I'll look back, a year or two from now at these initial podcasts and the little minor mistakes, or even some of the major mistakes that I've made along the way. But, as we say to the clients we work with, it's all a journey and the growth that we go through. And, sometimes you just need to start.
Well, Gary V, right? Gary
Yes.
Vaynerchuk. I mean, his first videos sucked, right? But now, he's been doing videos every day, for however long, you get good at something. If you do something long enough and you learn and debrief along the way, you get good at it. So yeah, his first few videos, he said, I went back, and if anybody's afraid, he says, anybody is afraid of starting out with video, he says, go back and look at my initial ones. And
Absolutely.
Don't look into where I am now and trying to compare to that. Look at the ones that I did when I started out.
For sure. And, Tim Ferriss, same thing.
Yep.
He said it. And well,
I have a mentor of mine who used to say, before you can be good, you got to be willing to be ugly.
You bet. Well, and stepping out the comfort zone. Well, I am working with this, but that's my God-given face, and I'm not about to, augment it through surgery or anything. I'm, at this stage, I'm fortunate enough to have a beautiful wife, and as long as she's still happy with all of this, I'm okay. So Nicole, one of the questions I love to ask people out of the gate is, what was kind of your motivation for getting into the field and that founder's story? Because everyone seems to have an interesting journey, and I know in conversation with you, you had a strong business background. You and your parents had a business that was very successful. You moved on from that to come into the coaching, consulting, training industry and lead this podcast of leaders worldwide. So what was your motivation for doing the shift? And then, the journey.
Yeah. So as you said, I did have a background in business. I started my own business when I was 16, and talk about looking ugly or being ugly. That was ugly. 16 years old, trying to, sell products to business owners, they weren't really taking me seriously. I was selling fax machines, $2,500 fax machines. They were, I'm going to date myself, but they were brand new on the market. Nobody had ever heard of fax machines. And so, I started out there, learned a lot of things along the way. Then my parents and I partnered and built I had worked with them the whole time, and then had ultimately partnered with them, built a successful business. The shift to becoming a coach was taking all the things that I had learned there and saying, how can I teach that to other business owners and leaders so they don't have to go through the same mistakes that we went through? And, and then when it's funny because, people have like transformation stories, and there's the time that, they went from this is defining moments, right? Before I was doing this, then I had this defining moment. And then afterwards, now I'm doing this. Well, the hero's journey, right? For me, it's like been a constant evolution. So, the next phase of that journey, or the next defining moment, was, I was successful. I had a very successful coaching practice, and I went through a series of events, personally and in business. I owned a franchise that the franchise system was not all that it was cracked up to be. So I ended up having to walk away from that, losing my investment in that. And then ultimately the franchise system shut down. And so a lot of things happening at once, personally and also business wise. And, I was looking, I was like, okay, so now what? And as well, the industry was changing so fast in the midst of all that. The coaching industry I'm talking about, everybody,
yes.
Now is a coach. When I started it, I didn't have the goal of being a coach. That wasn't the intention. The intention was doing workshops and empowering people that way. And then people started asking me to coach. So here I was looking at this, the industry's changing. There's lots and lots of coaches out there. And I'm asking myself, is that what the world needs from me, is to continue to coach? Or is there something else? And so I was in this question. And, to answer that question for me, I realized that there is an up-leveling of my coaching in who I'm actually working with. Not the what, but the who is evolving. But in the process of that, I actually woke up one morning and, you stand in the question long enough, you get ideas and creativity starts to flow. And what I had is, I call it a divine download. It was like, it was so intentional, so specific. One Saturday morning, God, it was like this message. It said, it was at 4:30 in the morning, you are going to do a podcast. You're going to call it Leaders of Transformation. I had reserved the domain name and was planning to use it for a mastermind, and sort of with the same idea, but I hadn't thought about doing it as a podcast. And so he said, you're going to do a podcast. It's going to be called Leaders of Transformation. You're going to interview difference makers and world changers. Go. And I'm lying in bed and I'm thinking, so when am I going to, so I was like, okay, when am I doing this? Now. Okay. Podcasting wasn't actually on my radar. So I didn't know about it, didn't know how to do it. So the first thing I did was I asked myself, okay, well, who knows about podcasting? So Mark Mawhinney, Natural Born Coaches founder, I'd been on his show. I think it was like number 17. And by that time he had done like 350 shows. And so I saw him grow and become massively successful and build a business off of that. And so I called him up. He's 4 hours ahead of me on Atlantic time. And I said, hey, Mark, like, what do I need to know about this podcasting thing? And so he's like, well, you need to know this, 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 and this. We talked for about 15, 20 minutes. And it happened to be a Saturday morning. So I was like, okay, well, now is now, right? So let's do this. So then I was, figuring it out, setting it up and everything. And I think we were live within 2 weeks. I think Mark was the first. I said, well, great, Mark, you're episode number 1.
I love it.
So we recorded the first few episodes, and was live within a couple of weeks. Never did I have the bigger picture of what this was going to be. And I think there's a lesson in there. Sometimes we think we need to know. I like systems. I like planning. I like strategy. And sometimes we think we need to know the whole path, right? What it's going to look like, and have a clear path forward. And while that's valuable, right, for, leading companies and moving forward, you have to have a vision. You have to know where you're going. Otherwise, you're kind of lost, and wandering around. And yet at the same time, there's a time and place for just getting started. It's the lean startup model and saying, okay, I'm going to go with a minimum viable product. We're going to test, we're going to measure, we're going to see do people even like this. There was no point in me doing a big, massive, vision strategy session, marketing strategy, if people didn't like it, right? So we put a few episodes out. Hey, how's this going? Do I enjoy doing it? Do people enjoy listening to it? Is it good for the guest? Great. Then I started building the strategy around beyond that and said, okay, well, what can we do with it now?
And that's excellent. And I love, how people push through before having all the confidence, stepping out of the comfort zone, because our natural tendency is we procrastinate because we're waiting to have all the knowledge and wisdom and know everything from A to Z before we start. And the lean startup model and literally just starting and pushing through and learning as you go. There's something about just being vulnerable and stepping forward with a learning and growth mindset, I think, is key.
Yeah. So, there's actually something with this too, I have to say, because I am a perfectionist and I'm a recovering perfectionist, perhaps. Like to think that some days I look at it like I was trying to record something, yesterday, I think it was, and I was doing it on my own. And here I've done 250 some odd episodes, whatever, right? And here I'm doing this short little 1.5-minute audio that I'm recording, and you think I could do it in 1 or 2 takes. And it took me an hour to do it. And it's like, I was such a perfectionist, and I caught myself doing this, and I was like, no, that's not good. Okay. No. And I was doing it over and over again. And I thought back to my start in podcasting, and I'm like, it's a good thing I had guests on the show because, you can't start and stop when you have somebody on the phone with you or on Zoom with you, and they've got a time frame. There's no, well, let me start again. I said something, out of, I said it the wrong way, or it didn't come across the way I meant it. You just go with it. And, so it's a good thing. Otherwise I probably wouldn't have gotten past episode 5. I think I would have worn myself out by then. So yeah, you just screw it up. The other week I was promoting my new book on a podcast, and I was using, it was like my English was off. I'm saying overcome. And I'm like, what was that? I'm saying, I'm meaning overcame it. Stories of people overcoming things. And anyways, it was messy, but I'm like, it's a good thing, because if we were all perfect, if you out of the gate were doing this perfectly well, like let's say everything went seamlessly, then, people don't believe that they can do it. So the vulnerability actually becomes a strength.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
I love that. And you brought up the book. Power Up Superwomen is the name of the book.
Yes.
And you're one of many authors in the book, and it's stories. Tell us a bit about the book and what it's about and how you got involved.
Sure. So Dominic Damasky, he's a part of the Leaders of Transformation community, and he's been on this show. And he has a publishing company. He leads Motivation Champs. So he's got a Facebook page and everything. You want to go check that out. But Dominic came to me last summer and said, I want to do this project. He's done a number of compilation books. And so he actually came to me and said, hey, would you like to be part of this women's empowerment project? And we're going to do this book. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to. In fact, actually last year I was going through some personal things with my mother passing and some other things going on. And I had originally planned on taking the summer to write a book. But with all the things that were happening, and now I'm dealing with the estate, my mother passed away suddenly. I wasn't prepared for it mentally or emotionally. And so I thought, yeah, this writing a whole book is probably not going to happen, but I can write a chapter. So that's awesome. That's what I did. And so I wrote a chapter called A Worthiness from Within, and shared my own personal journey with that. and everybody's got different, a different story. Some people have difficult childhoods and they learn certain things through their childhood. Others, I had a good childhood. I knew my parents loved me. I was good in school, and yet at the same time, there was a belief system. There were things that I learned or I derived the meaning that I gave things that didn't serve me ultimately, right, in terms of my worthiness. Anyway, so I tell the story of that and how that blew up a few years back. And I came face to face with my own sense of unworthiness. And how did I get beyond that? And some tips on how, specifically how you can do that for people that are reading it. So it was a lot of fun writing it. The other ladies in the book, so all of the stories in the book are about courage and empowerment, women who have overcome great struggle, whether it be in their health, whether it be in relationships, whether it be in business, great losses, and how they overcame it and now help other people through it. So how their mess became their message. So
I love it. How their mess became the message. That's a good line.
Yeah, I stole it from someone.
I love it. Well, and it's interesting because I was having a conversation with two friends in the past week. We were talking about how, anyone over the age of 30 has lived a certain amount of life that we all come with a few battle scars, and everyone has some baggage. To deny if you're over the age 30 that you don't, is insanity. Yeah, because none of us walk on water unless it's frozen. That's the bottom line. None of us is perfect. So I want to come back to, you talked about how you've leveled up in your own business and in terms of the type of client and work you're doing. Where you're at now, who would be your ideal client that you like to work with?
Yeah. So when I originally started off, being that I owned a business and I was used to, it was kind of a unique experience where we had a very large team, like thousands of people in teams. So It's just scalability, is something I was used to, right? And systems and all this. So where that benefited people most, or business owners most, is with business owners who had teams. And so that I could apply that and teach them what I knew, right? So like I was saying, to help them avoid going through some of the same pitfalls that we went through as we learned along the way. And then I went through a season of working with a lot of micro entrepreneurs, solo entrepreneurs. And what I found in that, as much as I absolutely love it, I was a grassroots entrepreneur. I didn't have any, capital funding, investors, any of that. It was, if I wanted to do something in my business and it cost money, I had to go out and sell something. Mom and dad did not give me money to start my business. Right. And that's just not the way that they felt was going to make sense. Right. Even my first car, my dad's like, okay, this is how much you owe me. So even though he got it through his garage for a couple $100 or whatever, but it was teaching, and they taught me great lessons through that. Right. Is to, and I think that actually, just to take a little bit of a tangent on this, for people that are listening, sometimes there are solo entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs who say, well, if only I had X amount of dollars, if only I had an investor, somebody who could, pour some money in my business, if only a family member would loan me some money, if only I had credit. And, it's funny because the amount of time that is spent on trying to get more credit or borrow money, if that time were to be spent on how do I make more money? How do I create so much value in the marketplace that the marketplace will want to pay me back for that? And then I can reinvest in the business. Certainly there is a time and place where your business, you may need some investment dollars to scale up. But for a lot of people, that's not necessarily the case. And to get resourceful and start to think, stand in the question of how do I raise the money? How do I earn it? And the beautiful thing about that is that you don't have to pay it back, and you build a model which is sustainable. But anyway, so I was working with a lot of micro entrepreneurs for a season, and I really found that as fun as that is to see them grow and to thrive and have great success stories from that. My passion and my what stimulates me is being able to apply all of the knowledge that I have. And so working with larger companies, business owners who have teams of 25 to 50 to 100 or whatever, that they've got a different dynamic going on within their teams, even 10, right? There's a different dynamic. When you have 10 people on your team, like there's a relationship model. When you have 2 people on your team, there's one relationship to manage. When you have 3 people on your team, then you've got, now all of a sudden it's starting to multiply, right? 10 people on your team, you actually have 45 relationships to manage because there's all the relationships between the people, right? So there's a team, there's different human behavior dynamics that go on. And so that's when it gets really fun. And that's also where you can have greater impact. And I'm very passionate about transforming businesses, because through the transformation of the business, you can transform, because everybody is in the marketplace. Everybody, whether you're employed or unemployed, is influenced by the business, even if it's them walking down the street and they don't have any money. Well, if businesses are good and somebody's panhandling, for example, people are going to be more inclined to give when they have. And we spend so much time in the business space that's the space that I really wanted to focus on. So the bigger the business is, the more impact that I can make through that. Now, on the flip side, huge companies is not really my gig either, right? Because I'm an entrepreneur. You got to go through and take 6 months for, them to make a decision. Unless you, of course, are working with the CEO, then, you can make decisions a lot faster, which is where I generally, if I'm going to work with a larger corporation, I want to work with the owner. I want to work with the decision maker, the CEO. Absolutely. But actually, a decision maker and CEO sometimes are not the same people, right? They may move me back down again to talk to somebody to implement and execute, but they've already made the choice that this is where they want to go. So big companies, multi-billion-dollar companies aren't necessarily where my sweet spot is either, because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and the bureaucratic system is a whole other animal. I have worked in large organizations, more on departmental stuff. Even worked in government and doing some stuff briefly, but that was more about them asking me to come in and do some workshops. But business owners, leaders that are leading teams, they are at a point where they are, first of all, they could be starting out, gathering their team together, and they want to do it. They want to come out of the gate doing it, quote unquote, right the first time, build the systems and the team the first time around. So it's the startup. Then there are the businesses that are stagnant and, they're stuck at a plateau and they don't know how to grow from there. And so it's the startup, stagnant, and then it's the successful business who is saying, okay, now what? How do we take it to the next level? We have a great foundation. How do we scale it up? And they're looking for that scalability. So those are the 3 areas: startup, stagnant, and scalability.
Awesome. I love it. And like you, we prefer to play in the private enterprise market and the mid-market. What we're talking about is the mid-market. Yeah. And, by default, you get invites, for speaking or workshops with the multinationals and that. But, the bulk of time and contracts tends to be mid-market, because most of those large corps, the reality is, have a lot of internal training department and resources, and they prefer to do that and parachute people in and out. So
yeah, and I've done that. I've done the parachuting in and doing, but if you want to create true transformation, you don't do it by parachuting in and out. You can start the conversation that way. But ultimately, I was talking to somebody else about this. We were because he actually does want to go into big companies. And so as I like the large corporate enterprises. And so if you're going to make a change in those organizations, it has to start at the top. You can't start with middle management and start to make changes there and then hope that it's gonna, rise up. It doesn't work that way, right? And especially when you're talking about cultural change. So, they've got to be willing, and they got to know that there's a need and there's a willingness to make the change at the top level. And then you can start to make changes within the organization. But there's lots of people in the Leaders of Transformation community that do that, and they love working in that space because they come from the corporate background. So let them do what they do best, and then I'll do what I do best, and you'll do what you'll do best, and we'll all make a difference together. So
sounds good. So tell us a little more about the Leaders Transformation community. There's obviously the podcasting you do within the community as a tool, but who's in this community and what's it about?
Sure. So most people who've done a podcast, you have lots of guests on your show. And one of the greatest values that I've gotten actually out of doing the podcast is, number one, reconnecting with people that were in my community already, my network already, people that I knew, amazing people that were making a difference in the world. And this was an opportunity to circle back, have a conversation with them, have them on the show, showcase them. And it's also been meeting new people. You and I wouldn't have been having this conversation or the conversation on my podcast if I didn't have a podcast. So I've gotten to meet so many people. I think probably my network is probably doubled in the last few years just as a result of that. And with like really amazing difference makers, world changers, thought leaders. And so what I decided to do though is like, wow, okay, I'm a connector by nature. So if I'm having all these people and I love connecting. So I'm like, hey, you need to talk to so-and-so and you need to have Corey on your show and blah, 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 and all this. Well, then I need a place to be able to do that. So that's where the Facebook group came in, where I thought, okay, well, what kind of platform can we use for that? And the Facebook group was and is good for that, right? So the challenge with that, and I was hesitant to have a Facebook group because I'm like, oh man, I'm in so many Facebook groups. I never look, and they're trying to stimulate engagement and, get people talking and so forth. So they ask random questions like, what's your favorite color? And, what did you do on the weekend? Or whatever. I'm just using examples. Yeah. And I just wasn't into that. I'm like, I don't have time. I mean, I love you. I don't really, need to know everybody's favorite color. So, there's bigger things to do in the world. And no disrespect to those people who have used that tactic, but it's just didn't resonate with me. And the people that I'm hanging out with and the people that are on my podcast, they're leaders. They're like movers and shakers. They're not on Facebook, as much as a lot of other people are because they're busy. They're doing a lot of things. So I needed a way to be able to bring people together. And so what I did was I started this group last January, so a year ago, and invited some of the people that had been on my show. And then invited some other people that have been difference makers. So it is made up of people that are actively making an impact in the world. It's not designed, and so there is a qualification process in the sense that I ask people 3 questions if they want to be part of the group, and I vet them. And I want to make sure that they are out there actively doing something which is elevating consciousness, which is expanding, the message, like we're talking about being a leader of transformation.
Absolutely.
There's the people that are looking to get in that space, which is, I have listeners that are like, I'd like to become that. That's what the page is for, right? So they can share their stories. If they're doing something, they can ask questions and so forth. That's not really what the group is for. The group is designed for connections only. As you know, we don't share content. It's not designed for that. It is strictly
designed. Sales and marketing.
Nope. You got all the other groups for that. This is specifically for building connections, strategic relationships, quality relationships being built between difference makers, world changers, so we can have a greater impact together.
Absolutely. And the nice thing is, because it's all busy people in the field, it needs to be personally relevant. And the engaging it's relevant with the quality of people that we all want to be associated with. Because, they say, your level of success is, tied to who your network is, who are your 5 closest people around you. And it's a pretty good indication of where you're at in life and what's a priority.
Yeah. And it's inspiring just to be part of a community. Like, I'm grateful for it because you guys, you're all out there doing something, and it's great to see that. It's great to celebrate that. And it's great to celebrate how I'm a big believer in one-to-many, right? It's not the one-to-one transformation. I mean, that's great. That's like the difference in my coaching, right? Is I can coach one individual and make an impact in their life. And as a result of that, it'll have a ripple effect on everybody around them.
Right. I
can also work with a leader who is in the position where it's a one-to-many impact on a much larger scale. And so when I looked at it and said, okay, well, there's a lot of amazing coaches out there that want to work one-to-one, let them do that. I mean, I one-to-one with individuals, personal coaching and that type of thing, solo entrepreneurs, micro entrepreneurs. But then there's the working with leaders where I can, help them have a breakthrough, or when they have that breakthrough and that aha, and they shift and they expand, to use, Shannon Graham, right? He's been on this
show. He was the last guest we did. And when you're talking about impact, ROI, he talks about ROI, but he calls it ripple of impact. And as you're talking, I'm going, that's Shannon. So it's interesting, and his whole expand.
Yes, exactly. And so to expand that and saying, how can I have a greater impact? I've done this. I've been successful here. I've coached, thousands of people individually, worked with people over the years. I've been doing this for a while now, and that's great. Now what? And I think there has to be that evolution, because you're only either growing or dying. There's no staying still. And for me, I needed that stimulation, because otherwise I'll start to get bored. And if I'm not able to show up with everything that I have to share, then I'm missing out on the benefit, right? And the feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of contribution and growth. Tony Robbins talks about the 6 human needs of human needs psychology. The 4 primary human needs are certainty. Everybody needs a certain amount of certainty in their life, some area of their life. We also need a certain amount of variety, right? We need a certain amount of significance to know that we're important, that we're unique and valuable, and love and connection. So those are the 4, love being a deep sense of love, connection being more of a surface type of connection, right? So those are 4 human needs. We all get them met. Is some ways, maybe healthy, some ways maybe unhealthy. We all get them met. There are 2 spiritual needs, though, that not everybody gets them met, but they're what he would call part of that core. And it's one of them is growth, and the other one's contribution. And so for me, I want that contribution. I want that feeling of growth. So, and I think we all do ultimately, but we have to get the first 4 needs met before we can move on to the next 2.
Yeah. The first 4 are the baseline that you have to build upon. If you don't have the foundation,
you don't get those met.
It would be like building a skyscraper without a foundation. You just can't. You literally can't do it.
Yeah, we're actually talking about performance here. So let's say, let's say somebody is growing, they're learning a lot, right? And they're contributing a lot, but they don't have love and connection. They don't feel that love personally. They don't feel, significant. They don't feel, how many times have we met, somebody that is very educated, right? But isn't actually applying it, or somebody that, and I've fallen into this sometime, where it's like you're serving, you're giving out so much, you're contributing to other people, but you're not getting your own needs met. And at some point, there's a deficiency, and you run out of, like I call it, the emotional bank account, right? That emotional bank account runs out, and you don't have anything else to give. So your contribution capacity to contribute goes down. Your capacity to grow and even learn and retain information, being even interested in retaining or learning anything goes down. And so you don't have anything to give. So you got to make sure those 4 are taken care of, and then you can move on from there.
You bet. I know with my daughters, there's a book on filling the buckets, and those first 4 need to be filled so you can then fill the other ones. And when those are being overflowing, this is where you're contributing to everyone else's bucket. And it's actually that synergy. And I love that. And I want to come back to the performance side. You talked, obviously my hot model is a high performance model for success in teams. And you have your own success habits and performance habits and things you like to do. What are some of those that you like to share with the audience?
Yeah. So before I unpack that, sort of set the context for that, I have a what I call a results model, which I use. And that results model is, everybody wants a certain outcome. We want to create something, achieve something in our life, whatever that is. But where do results come from? Results come from behaviors and actions, the things that we do, right? It's the doingness. But what influences the effectiveness, impacts the effectiveness of the doing is who we're being. A lot of more and more people are, talking about that, the be, do, have, right? So if I want to have, there's certain things I need to do, but actually rather than most people have it, the have, do, be, or do, have, be in that order. It's actually be, do, have, which means who do I need to be, right? What is my mindset? What does my mindset need to be in order to take these actions and to be effective in those actions and to get the results that I want? So I talk a lot about mindset. And mindset, so it's results, behavior, mindset. And then I actually learned that from Blair Singer. And then I unpacked it further myself and saying, okay, well, how do you develop the mindset for success? Sorry, I've got a dog here that's all of a sudden like this. Noise. I'm at my brother's place, and he's got these 2 little white dogs. Anyway, cutest things ever, but I can hear him somewhere underneath the chair. They're afraid of the ice breaking off the roof. It falls down. Anyway, so
right, because you're visiting from California to Northern Ontario during a cold snap.
Yes, I'm having flashbacks. So having grown up here for years, I'm like, oh yes, this is why I live in California. But no, it's been great. So we have these big icicles actually on the side, like huge icicles on the side of the house. It's really kind of neat. But anyway, coming back to, so we have results, behavior, mindset. I learned that from Blair. And then I actually started to unpack it further and saying, what can we do? What are some of the practical, to your point, what are the habits, the success habits that impact that? Because your results will never exceed what your level of mindset is. So, what makes up your mindset are your is certainly your beliefs, right? Your beliefs about yourself, your beliefs about others, the beliefs that you have about the world around you. It's these human needs that we're talking about, the 6 human needs. It's also the personality that you were born with. Right. So you've got, I teach DISC, right? The DISC model of human behavior. You've got different personality types. That personality that you have, those behavioral preferences or thought pattern, that they're going to influence your mindset. So when we talk about performance habits, I look at, okay, what are the words? What do we believe? What do you believe about yourself? And how does that show up? So it's kind of like if you imagine a tree or a plant, right? There's a plant. A plant will only grow. And now I've got my cat showing up. Everybody wants to be on the party.
This is like Animal Kingdom.
I know. It's a funny farm or one of the 2.
Was it Jack Hanna? Was that the name of
the Jack Hanna?
Yeah, was that his name? I don't Man, I must be really old if I'm going back there.
So, but I'm like, okay, everybody stop moving. hey, this is, we talk about podcasting and it's never perfect.
This is awesome.
This is like, this is the bloopers. But anyway, so when you have a plant, right, and, that plant will only grow as large as is possible based on the container that it's in. So that is what I call our life concept. So all of this mindset, this, how that breaks down, that creates our life concept, and your results will never exceed your life concept, right? So when we talk about habits, I look at it from 3 areas and say, okay, we need, there's things that you do every day. I can tell you those things. I wake up in the morning, I ground myself, I read, I pray, I put something, good into my body, healthy into my body, take a shower, listen to some music. I exercise. I do those things in the morning. Those are what I call my winning strategy for the day. When I do those things, life works. When I don't do those things, life doesn't work. But even fundamentally throughout the day, what are the things that we do? And I love what Tony Robbins, coming back to Tony, he has I did the strategic intervention coaching program with the Robbins Madonna Center. And there's the words that what we say to ourselves. What do we say to others? But even more so, what do we say to ourselves? The focus that we have, and the state. I actually talk about it in the book. Those, the 3 things that helped me to even build my own self-worthiness was looking at my words, looking at what I was focusing on, and looking at and changing my state. And so all the success habits, then what I did is all these things, the personal development world, they've got all these affirmations and, gratitude and this and that and all these great things, and people get overwhelmed by it. So what I did is I looked at that and said, okay, let's change your words, change your focus, change your state if you want to change the experience that you have of life. So how do you change your words? You change your words through affirmation. Noticing, first of all, you got to be aware of what you're saying to yourself. And then you go, okay, so this is what I'm saying to myself. Is that working for me? Is that supporting me? Is that elevating, me during the day? Or is that diminishing me? Well, it's diminishing me. Okay, great. Well, what kind of words, what kind of language would empower me? What would elevate, expand me, right? And so looking at our words and then creating affirmations from that, if you want to create affirmations, or just even in the day when you say that, oh, I can't do this. No, wait a second. It's not that I can't do this. I don't know how. Okay, well, I can learn how to do it and then go from there. Changing your focus. That's where gratitude comes in, right?
For sure.
What are you focusing on? I can tell. I just have to listen to somebody for a few minutes and I can tell what their results are likely at that point. I can almost predict their financial statement based on what they're focusing on, what their words are, and what is their state of mind, emotionally, mentally, their physiology. If they're slouched over, you don't need somebody to say, hey, by the way, I'm depressed. You just need to look at them. And because of their physiology, the way that, and so, when we focus on those areas, we can shift things very quickly. And how does that relate to performance? Well, if I show up, it's all about who I'm being, right? Be, do, have. If I'm showing up powerfully, if I'm speaking confidently, if I'm dressed for success, as the old saying is, right? If I'm hanging around, you talked about the 5 people that you associate with. I'm hanging around people that are expanding my mindset. I'm listening to their language. Shannon Graham, you're talking about the language that he's using, the focus. What's his focus? His focus is, on expansion, is on the ripple of impact, the ROI. It's a different conversation than somebody that's complaining about the weather. It's too cold, it's too hot, it's too rainy, it's too this. That's a shrinking, conversation. So yeah, change your words, change your focus, change your state. Ultimately, you just focus on that. It'll shift your performance. And to practically speaking, when I talk about this mindset piece, I've had clients where we just focused on mindset. They wanted to grow their business. They had issues going on from a revenue standpoint, profitability, team performance, and we just strictly focused on their mindset. What did they believe about themselves? What did they believe about others? What did they believe about the world around them? And how was that showing up in their words, focus, and state? And, in just even like in a few weeks, well, in this one case, for example, increased their sales by 150%. We reduced their work week by 18. This is for the owner. 18 hours a week, reduced his work week. So we got more results in less time.
I love it.
Just by shifting this, because what we did is we expanded his container and and his capacity and what was possible. A lot of times, and then I'll shut up and you can ask me another question, but that's what we believe about. What do we believe about ourselves, right? A lot of times I hear people saying things that they're beating themselves up, whether in like specifically actually saying it, right? I'm so stupid, or I'm an idiot, or they might just be thinking it. I can't do this. This will never work, right? What do we believe about others? If you believe that others are cheap, that all they want is a discount, right? Then what are you going to do? You're going to want to give them a discount all the time because that's what you believe people want. That's the only reason why they buy, to your belief. Then that's what you're going to get. And you're actually going to attract cheap people to your business. And I know this one personally. You're going to attract cheap people to your business. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe the world around you is, let's say, for example, we're in a recession. I had a mortgage broker that I was working with at one point, and it was 2008. I was working with him for a little while, but specifically we're having this conversation. It was 2008, and the market crashed in the US, and I'm in Canada, and he says, coming the next day, and he's got like 60 agents, mortgage agents, right? They're all independent, business owners, but they're working out of his office. And he said, a smart guy, really smart businessman, has been very successful. And he said to me, we have to start cutting back. And I said, really, why is that? Well, all the stuff that's happening in the market in the US and blah, 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 and all this stuff is going to impact us here. And I said to him, did your bank account change today? He said, no. I said, are you paying your agents to be, part of your team? No. So why do we need to downsize again? Tell me again. Like I'm missing it. And he all of a sudden he stopped, right? And he was like, oh, he'd been listening to too much news is what happened, right? Or that's 24 hours. And so I said to him, no, that's what everybody else is going to do. Everybody's going to go and dive for cover because they're going to listen to the media, and the media is going to say, this is bad. This is what's going to happen. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? It's reinforced. I'm not saying it didn't happen. What I'm saying is that, they believe that it's going to happen to them. They're going to be part of that statistic. Right. And so I said, they're all going to bury their heads. You are not going to do that, right? Because you want to grow your business. So let's grow it. And so I said, is there still a pie? Are people still getting mortgages? Yes. Is it harder to get a mortgage? Yes. Okay. So that means you just got to get better, and your team needs to get better at what they do, right? But there's still a pie. You might have a little bit smaller piece or whatever, or smaller overall, but you can expand your piece. Anyway, long story short, by the end of that year, he had increased his business in 2008 by 10%, which was a pretty significant accomplishment considering that the market dropped by 30 to 40%.
That's huge.
And that's the difference. And all it was just having a short conversation going, no. And he went, yeah, you're right. What am I thinking?
Right.
And we carried on. And now he's got 110 agents. He's doing very well. He picked up business from all the guys who dove for cover, ladies that dove for cover, played ostrich waiting for the storm to pass. He was expanding. He was out there marketing himself. And so when the storm passed, he was way further down the road than everybody else. And unfortunately for them, I don't like to, I don't believe in the whole competitive thing. I want everybody to succeed, but I'm not working with everybody. I was working with him, and he was able to do that. So, and of course it helped his agents.
I love it. Well, and it always pays off, always in the long term pays off to be a courageous lion versus a scaredy cat or a lemming and just following the crowd.
Yeah.
Right. So
my dad has this great saying. He passed away now, but he had this great saying. He said, there's three kinds of people. There are those people that make it happen, those people that watch it happen, and then those people that say, what the heck happened?
Exactly. I love it.
Just make sure you're not in that last category for sure.
Yeah, the last two.
The last two. Yeah.
Yeah. Aspire to be a difference maker.
Make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to go back to an earlier conversation and where you're talking about contribution and that. You've created this community. You live out this idea in your own life. And, you know, as I'm developing my own community with the Hop Nation, it's not about you. It's not about me. We've been, in many cases, asked to do this and to share the network and the ideas with people. We get tremendous benefit from this idea of contributing. There is collateral benefit, but that's not the driver and the purpose behind it. You know, right. So I love that you're doing that, and I get it in terms of the motivation and what you're doing. And, you know, I commend you for that. And everyone in the community is obviously thankful. They say it all the time. Coming back though to even before that, we were talking about this idea of you need to start with the being, coming from a place of being. And my friend Steve Miller came up with the idea of essence, and Joseph Campbell had that same idea of you need to start with the essence, figure out what your essence and contribution is to the world, and then live out your life from that. And, you know, I don't know if you know this, but HOP stands for higher order performance, and higher order is the higher order goal. So those things like the values, beliefs, you know, all that social stuff in the iceberg model below the action and behavior that really drives our lives. And it's connecting to those drivers in behind. I'd like to just hear your thoughts on how you've connected to your own being and essence, and what you encourage others to do to be able to do that themselves.
Great question. So I was blessed in that my parents were always mission driven. And I remember being 7 years old. My dad owned garage businesses, a SO franchise, and later on Sunoco and some other ones. And when they started out in network marketing, I was 7 years old, and they got a grasp of the vision of being able to make a greater difference than just through his garage. And so they shared that. I remember him, you know, sitting us down as kids, my brother and I, and sharing this vision. And I got it right there. And it was always the forefront of every decision we made it was all about the mission. Zig Ziglar has this saying, love Zig. I saw him in person one time, and I just, you know, and listened to, of course, on tapes and everything. And he's one of my favorites, but he had this saying, and he said, you know, if you help enough other people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And, you know, we just lived by that. So part of it was that it was learned from them to live on mission. But at some point I had to ask myself, what was my mission? What was my essence? Not just as a family essence or what my parents' essence was. What was my thing? And after when I was, you know, after, because you know the story, right? We built a successful business and then it fell apart. The whole leadership issues and all that kind of stuff. And so, great lesson. And I was sitting down and I was thinking, like, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? And I looked back and I started asking myself, you know, what did I do when I was a kid? Like what? And I started looking at patterns. One of the things that I'm good at is actually seeing patterns and things and sorting. And so maximizing its strengths on the Strengths Finder. One of my strengths is as a maximizer. And so I used to maximize my room when I was growing up. I would organize the furniture every 3 to 4 weeks, and until I got to the point where I had it optimal, and then I was like, it's good. Right. So I do that also with, people. I see strengths in people and naturally. And so systematizing, it's all the same strength. So, but how did I discover that? Was I looked back at my childhood and said, what did I like doing when I was a kid? And where have I thrived, and what has come so easily and naturally to me that I just do it. And I just take it for granted. That oftentimes is the gift that we were given, that we take for granted, that we think that everybody else has, everybody else knows how to do it. It's like organizing. Well, doesn't everybody, organize like this? No, they don't,
Nope,
not at all. Right.
I will attest to that. Just.
Yeah. I actually, one of the first business coaching clients that I had, I actually acquired that client because I was doing a workshop for their team, and they had a business out of it, a very large home. And they had part of their house had been, renovated like to be a business. But I walked in and I literally wanted to turn around and walk right back out again. I was like,
oh, wow.
I just entered a tornado. Yeah, sure. We'll do a workshop on DISC and, the DISC personality types and help people understand each other better. But do you want to actually talk about what's going on over here? Because I can talk about this, but this area here, but unless we address the other areas, this is actually impacting this. You won't get as much effectiveness right from your team if your systems aren't in place. If it's chaos, you're going to be stressed out, all this stuff. So anyway,
creating our own distractions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it was, so yes, not everybody organizes that well. I grew up in a household where my mother was very German. So, everything was precise. So, I learned it, and it worked well for me based on my personality anyway. But, so I asked myself, okay, what was I doing as a kid? And then I started looking at themes. What could I do that when I did those things, time flew by? I was actually more energized at the end than in the beginning when I had started it. What do I love reading about? What do I love? And so I've actually taken people through this process of discovering your purpose, and what I call discovering your purpose or your passion. And there's just a series of questions, but they're not complicated, but you have to spend the time and being willing to honestly ask yourself the questions, go a little deeper than the surface of, right. Well, I liked playing baseball. Okay. So, what else? I loved sports. I loved music. I was great at academics. That doesn't tell me a lot. But when I started going deeper to, what are some of the things I like to do? Then I started to see some patterns, and then I could see how they played out in the rest of my life. So my passion is actually, or in my essence, if you will, is helping people play to their strengths, or maximizing strengths.
Yes.
So in doing that, it's interesting because years ago I had somebody say to me, wow, you do a lot of different things. And I said, no, I actually only do one thing, and I do it in different arenas. Because I had figured out what that one thing was. Playing to strengths, maximizing. So I maximize helping.
Billy Crystal. Remember, what was the show? City Slickers?
City Slickers. It's the one thing, right? So I just do that one thing. Yeah. And I would do it in all these different arenas, but it was clear, like for me, and it simplified my life. So I didn't feel like I was all over the place. I'm just always, I'd be on a date, the first date. I'm like, so, what is your passion? What do you love doing? Oh, I noticed that you get strengths in this, and all, like, I just naturally do it. You just do it all the time. And there are things that we all do that we just do automatically all the time, whether it's make people laugh, shift their perspective, teach them something. There are things that we do. And so for me, that's what it was. And I maximized my room when I was a kid because that's what I could control control and maximize. I maximized my sports. I maximized my music. I maximized my academics. That's how I did so well. Everything was easy and effortless. Right? So I was using that gift without actually even realizing it. And then later on, it's maximizing businesses, so because I see the business, when I say play into your strengths, there's the individual, there's the team, and then there is the business as an entity. So we look at what are the strengths of the business, the entity, what are the strengths of the team, and what are the strengths of each individual? How does that work together? So those are the three areas that, that I work on. But it's I don't say but, and it makes my life simple because I'm just doing my thing.
I love it. And it's very clear you're on your beingness and essence. And it's interesting.
Well, it's like the
three
connection.
Levels.
Yeah,
yes,
the connections absolutely. Is the same thing, right? It's just maximizing the relationships, the network that I have. I'm still doing the same thing. I'm seeing you have a strength, somebody else has a strength and passion, and put those things together.
And it flows. It naturally flows when we're connected to our essence.
Yeah.
Our beingness just flows. And I know Kirk, he's the German, my partner, who is the guy the organizer and maximizer in that way, but he's also the technical person that does the editing. And words, beingness, I'm not sure that's a real word. So Kirk, when you're reading this, you're going to give me feedback on it. So thanks, buddy.
I've heard it before. Beingness. Yeah, your beingness.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to make up.
You're an innovator. You're an innovator.
Exactly.
Thought leader.
If the president of the United States can throw out the word strategery in a State of a Union address, I think I can say beingness.
Sounds good.
So I know you have lots to do, and I want to respect your time. I have one more question for you that I'd like to throw out. So imagine yourself at your 100th birthday celebration, and who is there and what would you want them saying about you?
It's interesting that you asked that particular question because there was a time where my greatest fear was dying alone. And being single for quite a period of time in my life, then getting married, then getting divorced, not having any kids, and we have a small family. Is my brother, and he doubled the size of our family and is continuing to multiply because he had 4 kids. And so he specialized. They're all girls. So, but he's got 2 grandchildren now and all that. So, that was my biggest fear, is the thought of dying alone. And it was only after our business had fallen apart that this started to become an issue, because at that point I had this huge community, of thousands of people, that it never was an issue. But later on it became an issue. So when I looked at it though, and I realized that, your family, and even me looking at it, and I remember God, I was saying, God, like, I didn't have any kids, I feel like I missed out on something. He said, well, you don't have to birth the kids to have kids. You don't have to have, that family that you're
Amen to that.
Is, is not just blood relatives. It's more than that. And ultimately we're all one big family anyway, this whole planet. But, so it shifted my perspective on it. And so who would be there on my 100th birthday? I would want to have the people that I care about, certainly my family, of course, my immediate family, but also the bigger, greater family, that ripple of impact, the people that I have, I've helped, the people that I've mentored, those stories. I love those stories. Every once in a while, somebody will say, hey, thanks for making this difference in my life. And that just is fuel for my soul, and what would I want them to say about me? I would want them to, I would hope that they would see me as a good example, somebody that inspired, that elevated them, that empowered them, not just from a standpoint of being impressive, right? But being empowered, empowering them. I oftentimes, I've said, I've done workshops on public speaking and so forth, and powerful presentations. And I see there's 2 kinds of presenters. There's the one that when you finish when they finish and they get off the stage, you say, wow, they're amazing. They were an amazing communicator, speaker. And then there's the other one, which is, wow, I'm amazing. And they made me feel amazing. And they empowered me and encouraged me to walk out and believe more in myself. And that second one, there's not a right or wrong with this. But for me, I prefer to be the second one where people walk, I don't really care. They may come back to me and say, "Nicole, you're awesome." I'm like, "Oh, thanks." I'm more interested in how they feel about themselves. That client, by the way, that client that I say, that first business coaching client, I worked with her and her husband and their team. And it was several months in, a year, I don't remember how long, and totally transformed their business. And she came and she's like, "I'm so awesome. I did all this and blah, blah, blah." And there was for a second there, I was like, "Hey, I helped you do this." And then I was like, "Nope, exactly. Yeah, you're right. You did do it, and you're amazing. And and you're going to do even greater things going forward."
I love it. Well, I recently heard from some people I'm working with, and he talked about a trip that he did to, I believe it was Thailand. It was at a Buddhist temple, and the person had said, something along the lines of, many people aspire to be a king, but where the world is really changed and the difference is made is where you build kings.
Yes.
Where you're a king maker or a queen maker. And yes, this is what I hear from you. And I know that inspiration and that impact you've had for me. I would love an invite to your 100th birthday celebration, because I would actually say the words that you've said about you, because I've seen that and felt that impact. So you are in that second category, Nicole, and I thank you for that. And I really thank you for being on the show, as well as the listeners. I mean, the sad thing about a podcast versus being live is you don't get to see the impact and some of that. And I'm realizing that now, but there are so many nuggets. And I just want you to know, from my personal experience, you've nailed what you're aiming for. You know that. Keep fighting the good fight and keep doing what you're doing, Nicole. You're an amazing woman, and look forward to doing a lot more with you in the future.
Thank you, Corey. I do appreciate that. And you're right about podcasting. You're ending up like talking to a screen or talking to one other person. And you hope that it makes a difference for someone out there. And so it never hurts to remind your guests, like you're doing, that they are making a difference. So, and I do appreciate that. I received that. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And thank you all for sitting and listening to today's Hop Nation podcast. Look forward to seeing you next week.